to like, if you want to do something.
Recording.
Sick.
Maybe a nice little coaches chat
Yeah.
guest star thing.
I'll bring some camera equipment, get all
Yeah,
cozy.
right.
All right. So where I left off was this, I get dumped on a Friday,
Yep.
middle of the summer. I realize in it that, and it was really important for me to recognize this thing that I wasn't trying to change for this person because it was clear that this person was uninterested. But like, if I wanted to find happiness in a partner, in my mind at least, it felt like I was like just like again tracing back all of these like moments and being like, there's a root cause, and it's coming from some like this attitude inside. Um, and I was so lost. Like I felt so lost, but I knew at least let me try. And so I booked the class for Monday. And I remember showing up to the class on Monday. It was like a Monday night class. And if I'm gonna guess, I want to say it was like the 28th or like 30th. It was like very much end of the July thing. And um the same thing happened. And that was a really discouraging moment for me because I had this different attitude coming in that day of like, I'm coming in for myself. I want to better my like body and my just general health. And the class started, and I just immediately started feeling the same anxieties. And that was like a shocking thing for me because I had thought that at least, the difference between going to the classes earlier in the year and this time was like, I'm coming to this class for me. And, I was trying, and it was great to see Sean. I remember I was like so happy to see him, and I was like, yes, like we're gonna just like, and as the class was going, I just remember feeling this doubt in my mind of just like I had assumed I would have a different experience because of my attitude. And not that suddenly like I flipped the switch and my attitude was totally different, but like I didn't, and this is where this moment of kind of being like, this is like the same as I get when I'm in like a crowded space. I just get anxious and there's too many people and there's just too much stuff happening around me. And like suddenly any focus I have is all just going to like all these like really hyper things that like are completely unhelpful and distracting. And so I don't remember when during the class, but I was just like, you know what? I'm going to ask Sean if he does personal training because maybe I just need to be yelled at. Like that's what it is. And to digress for a moment, because like I remember as a kid growing up, and so this is the thing about like what Sean said earlier when I met him for the first time, and I was talking about myself. Like I'm pretty aware of like these things, and I remember even growing up as a kid and not having again many like discipline anchors, I'll say, like people showing me like what discipline is like and like working hard and like even when it's not fun and all these things like there was a show when I was a kid growing up on MTV. It was called Made. And it was the idea was like high school kid would be like, I want to be made into a cheerleader. I want to be made into a blah, 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 right? And they were like, it'd be like some out of shape person or somebody who didn't clearly was struggling. And I know this is like a reality show, so I'm sure it was all scripted. But they would hire a made coach, and this person would literally just like spend all of their time with this person and like help them achieve this goal. And I remember even as like a kid being like, I wish I had somebody like that. I feel like I would do well if I had that. So it's like in the back of my mind, I've always thought that like it was like I don't know. I only bring that up because like that was like the same like I remember thinking in that same wavelength in that moment in this class. And I'll never forget this. I went up to Sean at the end of the class. It was great seeing him, and I was just like, I asked him if he would do personal training, and he's like, "Yeah, email me like in the 24 hours." Or he said it was something about a day, like email me in the next day is what he said. And I was like, "Yeah." And so the hard part was done. I asked the question, right? The itch is scratched, as I would probably the old me would do, which is like, I'm like, oh, God, I should ask about this. Okay, cool. I asked. He said, yes, cool. Okay, I'll see you later. I did it, and like that's it. Like, and not actually like that used to be enough. Kind of like, when someone talks about something and it just satisfies them, like, and it's like you didn't do it. But like inside, I was just like, okay, I asked if the door was open. He said it was. I have to walk through it though. Like he's not going to pull me through this door, nor should he. He's a grown ass man. I'm a grown ass man. Like, and I remember that night, like kind of sitting there thinking, like, if I email him, like we're gonna have to do this. Like I can't do the same thing I just did. Cause that like and yeah, I remember reaching out within that like day period. And I only bring that up because Sean's response was like, was a little surprised that he heard from me. and not in a bad way, but just based on my, my track record. Uh, but he was happy that he heard from me. And then I remember us talking about like, okay, what's the plan? And so I'm going to stop there because I think there's some questions here now about intervention stuff. So I don't know if this is like just
Yeah.
so, but yeah,
Well,
that was like the moment for me though.
because it sounds like, I don't know, I feel like the typical or average general population person would walk into a gym and be like, oh, I want to specifically lose weight. Oh, I want to like get stronger. And it sounds like your goal coming in the second time after the breakup was more, I don't know what the word is for it, more like spiritual. Like it was deeper. Like there was way more. You were like, wow, I'm like going down this path of like the impulse control and everything.
Yeah.
And like, something needs to change because I'm going to continue like
Yeah.
almost like sabotaging myself. And so this was like your way of, I guess, like changing your entire self and being disciplined to something. I guess, am I tracking that right?
Trying. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll add some context here. I found the email.
Oh shit.
So I found the email and perfect storm, right? So the gym at the time, and this probably isn't relevant for your paper, Sydney, but just in terms of context,
I love
I
context.
don't
Yeah.
think I would have taken on any clients had we been in a different scenario. The scenario that we were now in was one where two coaches who we had a team of four, two coaches within the last 6 months have gone on to different avenues. So it was myself and Coach Abby. So it was a team of two. So I was much more involved as the owner in one-on-ones and building up the business and kind of being involved in that. And so I remember as I read the email, Peter at the end of class had asked about PT, and I said to shoot me an email somewhere about something. Email me about your availability, and so I'll read the email here that he sends. He sent it the next day at 1:37. So figure if he took a night class, this is less than 24 hours. He responded. He said, "Hey all, I was chatting with Sean yesterday, and I want to look into one-on-one. I know I need that extra push right now for some good habits to stay consistent with them. In terms of availability, I have any time before 10 a.m. outside of that throughout the day, except on Tuesdays. It might vary week to week, but if I had a scheduled time, I'd make sure not to book meetings at work. I'd like to go twice a week to start, maybe do two one-on-one, one class a week. Please let me know what works for you all and pricing. It was really good to be back in the gym yesterday." Um, and then I followed up with him and
Oh yeah, that was first line you said. I'm looking at the email exchange right now too, and the first thing you say is like, "Thank you for following up like quickly or whatever." And it's like, yeah, dude.
even planting a seed. The next line is I like that commitment because we
Mhm.
spoke initially about commitment, and there'll be a seed here of um when we get into the training of like his expectations for results,
Yeah.
and also me
Yeah.
knowing all this arc of him so far and just being a coach in the space for so long. I remember even a line that later he shared with me was a little deflating of you need to give me at least 5 months.
Yeah. I was just
And
about to say that.
that was only for the purpose of building him and getting him to a place mentally and physically. But so
Yeah.
I responded and I essentially, in a nutshell, um, wrote like, I'd love to help you build your foundational base. I gave him the times, the pricing, and essentially put a commitment line in there. If you're ready, let's get you booked for this Thursday at
Yeah.
9 a.m. Hit me back. I'm committed to helping you build this as part of your lifestyle, my friend. And he wrote back, 27 minutes later, I appreciate the fast response. Let's do Thursday at 9. I'd like to try to do 30 minutes and feel that maybe we can discuss the 45 if that's suited for me. Now, also, we started with
I know.
two.
I was just thinking about that. I forgot about that.
The dose of this, like everything becomes important from here.
Yeah.
Everything from
And
the amount of training, what we did, how he was met, because he was a previous, no offense, Peter, he was a quitter. Like
yeah,
he
big
was
time.
not accountable. And
Mhm.
now the stakes are higher in terms of economics,
Yeah.
like one-to-one. So go ahead.
I'm glad you brought that up. Honestly, that email feels good. Like I forgot about the actual exchange. I like just looked at it too. And I remember like thinking like, yeah, like, Sean's response made I remember saying this to my ex at the time back in the day. I was like, I loved Sean's classes. Like, all the other trainers were great and I loved working with them. But like when Sean would do a class, I just felt more engaged. I wanted to work harder, even if I was still kind of being a scrub. I felt that motivation. So the fact that he had this sort of like willingness so quickly, especially seeing, like you said, like you saw my track record, like you could argue, and I know you wouldn't say this, but I don't deserve that attention. Like I had the chance and I blew it kind of thing, you know, like that was kind of how I felt. So it felt nice to be like, all right, this guy's making the time for me and like wants to see me succeed. And yeah, I remember, I'm pretty sure, I don't know if it was like the first like one-on-one or if it was that Monday we talked, but you said, give me 5 months with you and you'll see crazy results. And I didn't say anything at the time, but internally I was like, what the fuck, man? Like 5 months? Like, you know, like not really fully understanding anything. And so yeah, I remember, and to touch on what Sean said, and I didn't think about this at the time, but I appreciate this now, like hearing you say it is like, yeah, you were really flexible. And like I remember you being like, we could do 30 minutes, we could do 45, we could do an hour. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like I remember internally feeling like, I don't know if I have that in me. And not like in this like I was really, because like, you know, I'm sure you've had these moments in your life where you're like, I'm gonna do this thing and I'm gonna hit the ground running, you know, and like you start really strong, or I should say I've done this many times, you know, hit the ground running and then you just burn out.
Mm.
And so I was trying to be like aware of that. And so it was really nice that Sean offered those options, that there wasn't this sort of like, all right, we're going to do like every single morning, you're coming in, you know, like we're going to do, you know, it was like, hey, let's find this thing that works for you, but that there's a consistency there. And yeah, I remember like showing up for that first like personal training. I don't remember what we did, but I do remember that I developed this like mantra I would say to myself at the end. Like I remember at the end of that one being gassed, like just, you know, got my butt kicked. And these three statements that I don't say anymore. It's kind of like when you tie your shoes when you first start, you say like loop, swoop, pull. You know, at least I did. You know, you say it out loud every time. And then after a while, you just kind of you probably say it inside your head still, but you're not thinking about it anymore, you're just doing it. And I would say the same three things at the end of every class for probably the first 2 months. I like really, it was important for me to like walk around, hand to my head, like breathing heavy and just being like, I'm committed, I'm showing up, and I'm not phoning it in. Because like you could commit to something, right? You could like sign up for something. And like, yeah, sure, I'm paying money. And I know Sean mentioned the financial thing. I was joking with my therapist about this. Like, there are people in the world that are motivated by that. Like Quentin Tarantino, the writer, used to say he would book a hotel room when he was writing a movie so that he felt like he was on the clock. You know, that he was like, you know, he wouldn't just write anywhere. I've tried that so many times, like monetary motivation, and I've just been like, I don't care, money's gone. So that wasn't necessarily like a motivator for me, this commitment to it. But then showing up was like, you know, okay, being present, that's what that meant to me. Was like coming there in the morning with the intent of like, hey, you're working out today. You're not fading to the back. You're not doing like, you know, like this 30 minutes that you've carved out for yourself. This is what this is for. And Sean's making the time for you
Mhm.
because I saw how busy he was. And you even told me, Sean, like that it was tough right now that you were like taking clients just because of like what was going on. So like that was in my mind too, and not in like a pressure way, like I got to do this thing, but just more of like a, hey, I said I'm doing this thing. This guy's like meeting me there. He's like a man of honor as far as I could tell of like everything he does. So, and then yeah, finally, so like, you know, I'm committed, I'm showing up, but then finally like phoning it in
Can I
because
share some
yeah,
thoughts
hit
on,
me. Yeah,
because it's interesting. We joke, Sydney, that the version of Peter, I mean, I would just call it Peter 0.0. Like in the
yeah,
beginning, this version of
yeah.
him that came in, he was 200 pounds, he was
Talked a good game.
eating like terrible, good, talked a good game, but he didn't, his follow through and track record was not great.
Yeah.
Then, you know, he had some lifestyle stuff happen, some life stuff happen, and he was trying to make that change. That all of the psychology and thoughts and beliefs were still very omnipresent for him. So when he came and worked with me, we're at a point now where we're like, I don't know, Peter 7.0. However, you're saying those things, Peter, which is funny. But what's interesting that I think I don't want to get glossed over is there was so much mental training taking place in his communication to himself was terrible initially. He would say things
Still
and
is.
I would say, um, you know, I would offer a thought and we would have a dialogue about it. And I could see, like, I have this belief, and you could confirm it, Peter. Um, Maybe part of the reason you sought out to working specifically with me outside of the stuff you liked in classes is, I wonder, being where we are now, if you saw things in me that you wanted to take aspects for yourself that
Yeah.
maybe you didn't quite have built up yet in terms of, discipline or whatever
Yeah.
these things are. And I see that now, like I see with the nutrition and the training and the mindset, and it's all a work in progress. The version of you in the summertime when we first started working together was so raw, but you were clay, but you
Yeah.
were you were also open. So like the
Multiple.
stuff you're talking about now, like you were like, I'm not here to phone it in. So then we spoke about that, and then you would add it to the mantra. And commitment was something that I had to anchor and suture and speak about so often because you were not a committed person. So to become a committed person, it was speaking and giving you something to live into. So that
Yeah.
it became part of the psychology that you were putting into your own system, not for me, for yourself, because this was about your health. This was about your longevity. This was about, feeling good about yourself. This was about building strength and building into this version of you, because an underlying tone in all this too is you were grieving. You were grieving through
I was,
the loss
yeah.
of a relationship and the change in yourself. And I remember distinctly because I kept papers. The third session we had together, and I'll share as his
Yeah.
coach, I have I have a very strong awareness of like how to meet a person's needs and their physicality. So like nothing in the beginning was level 10 difficult. It
No.
was
Yeah.
pretty intelligent. It was in terms of training, like every minute on the minute so he could work and rest a little bit. Like it was very strategic. The third workout, he felt that discomfort bubble and threw in the towel and
Row
had
machine.
had an emotional
I was actually going to
emotional
get to that next. That was the next thing I wanted to
yeah,
talk about.
had an emotional meltdown. And it's interesting, and you can share, how were you met? Because you mentioned like when you reached out, like this thought of I need somebody to yell at me. There
Yeah.
was never yelling at you,
No.
and it's interesting of like,
Yeah.
so I think a big part of outside of training his body, which is the easier part, was training his mind.
Yeah.
And even we'll get to like ending our sessions with how do you feel? The word
Yeah.
accomplished becoming the main mantra, regardless of
I would
whether
say tired all the time, and then you were
yeah,
like,
tired
we feel
or
accomplished when we're done here," and I was just like, "Yeah."
so go ahead.
I'm glad you brought that up. And so I want to also say, like, around the summertime, right before I started coming to the gym, like mid-July, I had recognized that like I was kind of already in like the spiral. And so like my mind was already kind of churning. And so I, decided to go to therapy as well, like, talk therapy. I bring this up only because I think a big part of what's made me successful, like with Sean in the gym and stuff, is that it's not just working out. Like I'm not just going there to like build my muscles. And this is kind of what Sean was saying. Um, One of the things I didn't anticipate with starting this. So yeah, yeah, I remember I was on the rowing machine and I was having a really hard time like breathing. I was having a hard time with the actual mechanics because I get really in my head. Sean was just doing his job, like coaching me, and I remember I let go of like the thing and it like snapped, like, and I remember you saying, and like not in any tone like bad or anything, but just like, oh, we don't do that in here. Like, kind of trying to correct me because like I was like I think you recognized me teetering on that sort of like I'm about to crack.
Hmm.
And I just remember hearing that and just feeling like, oh my God, I'm fucking up, like, and like crying. And like I remember thinking like as I started crying, I'm like, dude, this isn't the space to cry. Like, what are you doing right now? Which then, just like like pulls the emotional chain even more. Uh and and I was met with like compassion. And like Sean wasn't like like, and whether you were frustrated with me or not for like what had just transpired, there was no part of that externally showing or pushing out towards me. There was just space. And that was something I wasn't anticipating. And not that like I want space to be like to cry in the gym. Like that's not what it was, but it made me realize that it's not just this space to get like strong. Or and there's definitely people who like approach it that way. And I actually just joked with Erin about this recently, like in like one of the last trainings I was doing, where I was just like, if the only thing I was getting out of this, like coming in, and I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I just want to say this, like, was just getting stronger, losing weight, getting muscle, like I probably would have stopped a long time ago because that is not enough for me. But what I was starting to see as we were going through this with Sean was one, there was this confidence that I never even saw in myself. And Sean, like what he's saying, like I would be like, he's like, how are you feeling at the end? And I would be like on the mat, like Vincent, you see me still like on the, like, and I'd just be like, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, like just negative language. And he would say, you accomplished a lot. And we should be saying you feel accomplished. And I don't think that I necessarily even believed it at first when I would say it when he would ask me. But the power in just changing the words, which is a theme that Sean and I have, that he's locked into with me, after a while, just saying it, whether I believed it or not, like it was like, yeah, I am. I just did like, it's not like I like, like he asked me to lift something, I put it down, I walked away. Then yeah, you shouldn't feel great about that, right? But like, I did all the stuff, I should feel accomplished. Whether I'm tired or not, that's not the point. It's like, yeah. And so that was like powerful starting to get that thing. The other thing, and this is like about the training part,
Mm.
Sean knew kind of the situation I was going through in my life. And I think that that was a really helpful place to be because I could talk to him about the challenges I was going through, and then we would really just like apply it to the gym. And there's two things like I want to talk about that, like two really like, especially these are all like early on things, but one was there was a workout, and I want to say it was like in September. So this is probably like a month and a half in, 2 months maybe. It was like a nice day out, and basically I don't remember the full like every detail of it, but the idea was like it was like the stair climb maybe is what you called it, but it was like you started light and then you started carrying more weight as you were doing things. I had to go outside with like 100-pound bag or some shit. Maybe it was 100 pounds. I don't remember, but I was like, and I remember as I was climbing, right, it got to this point where it was like, you were carrying so much shit right now, dude. Like this is, and then suddenly you hit the apex and then you start coming back down. And I'm getting like emotional thinking about it because whether Sean was intentional with that or not, for me, it was important because like, I was just like, whoa, all of these things I was like carrying into the gym, like these like feelings and stuff. I realized like I don't need to carry these anymore. And I could like put them down. And I just like I remember that being like a very much so like an important moment. I cried, I remember. Because that was like the first connection workout where I was like, whoa, this isn't me just like lifting stuff. Like there's like practical life things that I'm seeing here. And Sean helped me talk, like he would talk about it. So it was like there was like this verbal connection, but then there was like this mental thing. And so yeah, and I remember around that time, and I actually just revisited, I posted something on Instagram like 2 months in about just kind of where I'd been at with this journey.
Mhm.
Uh, and I'll go back on the diet thing in a sec, but I use this analogy about a snowball, right? And it's like you could roll it in any direction. It could roll positive, it could roll like, it's like you have to be the one though that kind of pushes it. And I found myself in that moment just being like, I'm putting professionals in these spots that I need them to be in. Here's this guy who's going to help me show me how to like build discipline in a way that nobody else has showed me in my life. And with this sort of grace and, clearly I'm an emotional person. And I don't think that Sean, at least from my experience with you, like, I don't think, or at least, you're not as sleevey as your emotions as I am, like, but you still like, and throughout the course of us working together, there's been multiple times where I've literally like broke down and cried for some reason. And it's never been met. Not that I'm like looking at Sean in those moments to like see how he's reacting to me, but like I've either never felt or never saw him kind of be like, this guy's crying again. Like it was never like that. And that's what I would expect because like, and instead, like one time it was on a pull-up bar. I was like 5 pull-ups in and I was so overwhelmed. I remember just hanging there crying. Like I was like hanging and crying. And I just remember you being like, you got 5 more, man. You got it in you. And like that right there was like important and powerful to be like, even in that moment of overwhelmingness, like you were there, like supporting me and trying to help me get through this. And when my company had layoffs in December and I was sitting against the wall crying with you, I remember you asking like, you want to jump on the bike? Like there was always this sort of like, I'm here for you. I want to show you that you could still do these things even in these like moments. And I remember being like, I can't right now. And you respected that. And like, I don't know, like those moments to me, it's like, talk about trust. And like, we joke about this too with Sean, like, I don't actually know most of the time the weights I'm lifting, like how much weight I'm lifting, you know, like because it's not about that to me. It's not about these numbers and stuff. It's about like Sean moving these goalposts for me to keep me in this challenging pocket so that I'm always kind of pushing myself past. Cause like, I can't tell you any time, Sean, and I'm like tangenting, but I just want to say this too. Like, I would think to myself, if I wasn't working with him, I'd probably plateau around this weight. I probably wouldn't go past this weight, or I probably wouldn't try to do more reps, you know? And so it's like, and not because like I'm trying to cheat or anything. It's just like, I don't know. Like, I don't know where my potential kind of goes. And so it's nice to have this person kind of grow with me or watch me grow and help kind of be like, yeah, you could do that. Like, I believe in you. And that confidence is like, it's crazy. Um, but yeah, I wanted to like, so yeah, that workout we did where I was carrying everything was one of the ones for me, at least, that I don't know, it really kind of changed my perspective on like what I could get out of this. Like, I really saw it.
What's great about you is to share about that workout, the things you were carrying. Um, and one of the attributes about you that I think has made you so successful outside of your shift to become committed and consistent, all of that, is your mind was very open and it wasn't you weren't fixed, you didn't have a fixed mindset. You had an open mindset. So when we would discuss things or we'd use things as a metaphor, or you needed to gently be checked, like you knew it was all from a loving place and it was a healthy place, like all of that. So coming in with an open mind, when we did that workout where you're carrying progressive plates
Yeah.
and metaphorically tying that in with where you were at in life, like you understood that. And you would always do a good job of applying, like seeing in retrospect and later in the day or in that moment being like, wow, like I just did this thing. And I think that's important too, because I just saw like a quote recently that we spend 90% of our lives picking the weeds, which is like essentially another way to being like looking for all the things that are wrong. And
Yeah.
that's the survival brain that can be so easy to get locked into. And maybe we've all been there to a degree or more times than we'd like to admit. So I think for you in the growth stage, because I really look at stage one for you from the summer to the winter was such a building, and everything we did training was so intentional and
Intentional how?
intentional in the design, intentional in like I learned very on with Peter. I couldn't and this is just something that I use a lot with anybody that I work with, but it was more important for him is whether it was loading, whether it was a target, it could never be fixed. We needed a sliding
Yeah.
scale. And this is important to share about him too, like as one small example. Say I said the target range here is 6 to 10. What that also proved for him is 6 is the minimum.
Yeah.
So I can do the minimum and I can be done. But seeing in him in real time and then coaching and communicating with him with what's left with what I see, whether it's there's more, it began to teach him that the minimum isn't, from my lens, my vantage point, I don't always need to do the minimum. Like there's more within me
Yeah.
and I'm learning there's
That's a
more.
great point.
I can demand more of myself. I can surprise myself. And also when I don't have it, that's another part.
Yeah.
Psychologically, physically, whatever it is, whatever the perfect storm is, whether I'm just fatigued that day or, I can't. Teaching a human that how to become adaptable and how it's okay. Like your worth is not wrapped up because you didn't get 6 today. Like today called for 2. And it doesn't mean that you're weaker. It doesn't mean that you're inferior than you were last week. And we adapt. So I think that those kind of jump out to me right away.
Anytime.
The training, whether it was the loads I was specific in having him do, how the training start, like we could not do the training we're doing now,
Oh yeah.
the training that he did in the beginning. The beginning, if I just say it real raw, he needed to have the ability to see that he can do this, that I don't want to say win at this, but like I can, you know, progress
I
through
agree with that.
where it was never about, you know, I think people are named CrossFit. They think CrossFit, I'm going to do burpees, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be dead. It's like, we literally focused on building strength, and it was gentle entries into the feeling, like the conditioning aspect, which was not really CrossFit. Like I knew this, the CrossFit part's really irrelevant, which
Yeah, I
is
don't
like
even know how much CrossFit I do, to be honest.
yeah, we don't. So it was like then as we started to really hone in on the training, it was like, Peter, what do you want, man?
Yeah.
And it was like little things like, you know, that would come out at those times of like maybe a pull up or pull
Yeah.
ups,
Yeah.
um, and and then like now, like as he's evolved, which we'll probably jump around a little bit, is like then realizing the power within his body. And I'll mention too, going back to being coachable, and this is really important. He took seeds that were planted because we were not working together in nutrition yet,
Oh
but
yeah,
he
that's what I
would
was going to talk about next
he
real
would
quick.
always take seeds that I would plant, and
Mm.
he would utilize them. And this goes back to you asking if we had in body. So example, like at the beginning, he was in January when he first came in, he was 200 pounds. I think his body fat was in the
I
high
had the D.
20s.
I had like the D shape.
Yep.
You had a C shape, a
Oh,
C shape.
C shape. Sorry, sorry. Yeah, yeah.
Shape, which essentially in the in-body form is like a weaker body type. It means your body fat's a little too high, your muscles
Yeah.
too low, and you want to reverse that relationship over time. And if you live there too long, obviously, like risks of health just go up exponentially. Um, and that was where point oh version of self was living.
Yeah.
And through consistent training and not phoning it in and becoming what I know now as a committed individual to himself.
Yeah.
And then taking, again, this goes to a tipping point where it will level out if you don't get your basics in nutrition down.
Yeah.
And the basics are not rocket science. They are just literally having your systems in place and being more compliant with them in a 70, 80, or 90% than not. So planting seeds, and he would take those. And it's not like he was telling me, you know, I'm going to go do that. It was, we'd have a conversation, and before you know it, he's having a post-workout shake, or
I was going to say that was one of them where, you're like, you should have one right after the thing. And then I would start coming in with them like the next time we worked out. Yeah.
building his discipline to not rely on fast food,
So
to
that
like,
was intentional in you planting those seeds, or they
Yeah.
just some of them naturally happen, or both.
Sometimes I would ask
mean,
him questions in the
yeah,
relationship. I'd be like, like, hey, like, like what's like, and you just be like, focus on like lean protein, like that. He would just say that to me, like it, like, and then it was up to me to kind of, you know,
Okay. Okay.
and I think as like how I think about coaching is, I don't think about, like Peter said, it's not enough for me to just coach a body to become strong too. Like I view it, and where my juices really, are met too, is it's a full 360 holistic approach of,
yeah,
I was coaching his mind,
yeah,
Mhm.
I was coaching his body, and then I was planting seeds for nutrition, and even maybe like, I don't want to say I was directly coaching his lifestyle, but like all of these things started to intersect.
yeah. It's
And
hard to
because,
not let them collide.
yeah, and because, and that's how I view coaching, because now being where we are now, like if you were to hold up these two versions of himself, it's like night and day. Health is night and day, body is night and day, mentality is night and day, the discipline, strength, resilience to do the
Resilience.
things,
Yeah.
like my goodness, like, and that to me is a life forever change, because the reference that we use very early on is the pathway in the jungle.
Dude, that's what I wanted to talk about next before we kind of get.
So Peter had this and this is like anybody can use this like for themselves. He had this cleared out path to the jungle of life that was, this is the pathway to easy. This is the pathway to fast food. This is the pathway to quitting. This is the pathway to, Netflix and binge, and spending all this money on weed, and then going, like you said, getting the hostesses and junk
Oh,
food.
yeah, it's crazy to think now.
So now we use this reference, and like Peter was big on metaphors. He told me like that worked for him. So we said, okay, every day you're going to grab out your machete and you're going to begin to carve out a new
Yeah.
pathway. And as you do that, we're aware that that old pathway is still there, and it's going to take time for it to overgrow and to become,
It's
you know,
well trodden.
yeah, it's well walked. It's going to become take time for that to become less visible. It's you can see it. It's still right there. But every day the work for you is going to be so um prominent to swing the machete. And like sometimes that's all we'd say is like,
Yeah.
grab out the machete,
Oh
swing the
yeah.
machete today.
That was
Like,
like you'd come in and say that in the morning, be like, "Get your machete out," and I
yeah.
want to.
So
It's true.
mental stuff. Yeah.
So yeah, I was reading. It was during this breakup, especially. This is like a connection. I want to just touch on this because this is the other thing that was really powerful, and this is why I like working with Sean because it wasn't just. I could just picture myself talking to a trainer, and then being like, "Cool, man," like that, like, and that's it. But I was like, I had so much anxious energy and I started going to the gym, which also I just want to say it was a wonderful feeling to realize I actually like going to the gym. And for the longest time, I thought I didn't like going. And I thought it was because it was the gym, but it was really the social anxiety. It was all these other things. And I actually found this like real love to the point where I don't know when it started, but then we started going 3 days a week because I was
Yeah.
just like, yeah, two,
I'd love to point this out because
yeah,
this, I think, um, maybe I'll share it. Are you comfortable with me sharing the numbers?
yeah, I don't care. Like money wise?
So, of the marijuana.
Oh yeah, I don't care.
So Peter and I were working together twice a week.
Mhm.
And I remember one day we were in a workout and I forget the exact context. And I was fully aware of what I was committing to this individual.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I was also fully aware of how much money he told me openly, he's an open book, how much money he was spending on marijuana in a month. It was like $800. And I remember him sharing something along the lines of like, I forget the loose context, maybe you remember a little bit better, but it was something about like, yeah, maybe I'll go down to like, maybe I'll go one session in one class, or like you were like
We were
debating.
at 3 days. We had bumped up to three, and I was like, I might dial it back to two. That's what
Okay,
it
so
was.
say we added a session. If this is the context, we
Yeah.
went to three, and he was toying around the idea of like regressing back to two. And I remember being like, in my mind, I said it to him
Yeah.
with love, not from a place of judgment, but just from a place of like, Peter said in the moment, just paraphrasing here, you spend $800 a month on weed or marijuana in a month. What is that doing for you? And and then when you look at what we're doing in these 30-minute sessions, 3 times a week, and what that's going to do for you and the ripple effect in your life. And it was another moment you cried. You cried in the moment, and
I
then you
cry a lot. I cry a lot.
and then
Yeah.
not in a bad way, but like it for
I'm not
you.
embarrassed. I don't know.
No, for you, like for me, seeing it, it was like you needed to hear that because to me, it was like, if we go back to the jungle, it was you looking at the easy path again. Like, oh, maybe I'll come back down because it was
Yeah.
new. And you've shared since, later on, like change is hard for you. So going
Yeah.
from two, now I have this third day, and it's a level up in commitment. And for me, it was this is where we're living, and we're going to go into the next evolution of what's possible. And he was then uh like, for me, I was like, I wanted him to have that metaphoric weighing of like, I'll spend $800 a month on weed over here, but I'll drop, to work twice a week, which whatever that shakes out to be with my coach here, versus like, no, 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 no. This is the important thing to invest in because this investment is in myself. It is in the totality of everything. And over here, I can lower this a little bit because of what it gives me and really put my chips in over here. And I wanted that to be communicated, whether we went to two or three, whatever, so he could accept whichever
Yeah.
choice he wanted. And ultimately, he came back, and I remember you loosely sharing like, no, like I'm committing to 3 days
Yeah.
a week, and so it was a shift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those
I mean,
shifts are so important because you either shift up or you shift down. And, he chose to make a shift up. And again, it was another tipping point in the arc of um, another layer in evolution of himself.
Mm. Even like
I'm
with the two paths in the jungle, even it's like, okay, I can make this decision here. Which am I going to go like towards the old path, or am I going to go towards the
yeah.
new one with this? And like you were kind of going towards the old one, and it was like, nope, actually, I'm going to take this step over here.
But
And
because the new path had some track already made,
Yeah,
it was a little easier to like say yes to that. Like, yeah, I might have to trip over a couple more weeds, but like it's not but like it's not this like blazing through a whole new thing. You know,
yeah,
like there's already a path we've started to punch through.
I might have had some tough love in there too of
No, you
like,
did. And I needed like, and you know, but you know,
yeah.
and I wanted to, I'm glad you brought it up because like I think this goes back to this like trainer trainee relationship where there's this authenticity there, which I value so much because like in this world right now with so much like fake shit out there,
Yeah.
mm,
authenticity is a currency that like it's you can't fake it. And so those types of conversations where it's like, whoa, like Sean, like you're not mad at me because it wasn't, I didn't feel like you were mad at me in the tone, but like you had a feeling about it. Like you felt a way about it and like you expressed it to me in a respectful way, but that like you felt like you had this like strong feeling about it. And like that was another moment where it's like, oh yeah, this guy's not just telling me to pick up weights. That's not what this like, you know, and like and I knew that at that point, but like those are the types of things that build that trust. And to go back to the jungle thing, like I was literally over the summer going for hikes and doing trail maintenance because I just had all this anxious energy. I didn't know what I was like. I was so sad. And I would just go for hikes. I would take like a saw with me and an axe. And anytime a tree had fallen down, I would get so excited during storms. I'd be like, yo, I'm gonna go out there and like, and then I started think and I was reading this book and actually I want to bring this to the library, the little library at Railroad, because like I'm done with it, but it was helpful. It was called Habits of a Healthy Brain. And this woman was using this analogy of the jungle. And I was like thinking, like, I'm doing this in real life. I'm literally like cleaning up trails that are messy. And I would start talking to Sean about it. And then the second I brought it up to him, and this is like again, why I keep coming back, why I show up with the like level of enthusiasm is because he took that with me and we ran with it. Like he said, you know, I'd walk in, he'd be like, all right, get the machete out because like and for me it's like yeah that helps me push through whatever shitty thing I'm doing in the moment where it's like I want to quit, I feel the quit in my head, but I'm like this is the work that we're doing to like make that path. I know we're kind of close on time. I just want to touch on diet stuff really quick because like that was another big thing. So like Sean said, from July to December I didn't take like a nutrition class, but
mm-hmm.
to coincide with all of this like hard work and effort I was putting into my body, it would have felt really counterproductive to then just like, you know, wash that all away with going to get my 20-ounce Coke and my little Debs, whatever, you know. And
Yeah,
I remember talking to Sean about this and like, because I honestly had no idea how to approach it. I was like kind of scared because like I've always had a weird relationship with food. I've always given into this impulse to just eat whatever I want because I've always been kind of skinny. And I remember saying this to you, Sean, like early on, this might have been like August or September, but being like, man, I thought about getting like McDonald's. And then I thought about how hard I've been working in the gym, like
mm,
in a session. And I would think about in my mind, do I want to net this, all this hard work, or do I want to be paying off this debt from something that's not even like that good for me?
Hmm.
And this was just a perfect storm of all these things kind of happening at the same time. But like I started going to bed earlier because I was tired from working out. You know, and I think that like kind of going back to what Sean was saying about that sort of trying to be a good student of something, right? Like, or try like just embracing the full spectrum of what's happening and not just that like I'm working out, but it's like, huh, I got to go in the class in the morning. I don't want to show up dragging my ass because it's going to be tough. Also, I know when I bring a bad attitude in, that affects Sean, right? Like whether he wants it to affect him or not, it's going to impact how he feels now because he's like, dude, I'm coming in with this energy and I'm getting met with like you like being, you know, and so those types of things started motivating me. And then it became this question about like with food where it's like, why am I and Sean and I talk about this a lot. I started building these questions into my diet. And so what would happen would be like I would be sitting around and I still smoke weed, so that's still a thing, but like I have control over the impulse now. So I suddenly feel like snacky. And instead of just feeding that impulse, right, that I'm like, I'm hungry, I'm gonna go get some chips. I would stop and go like, why am I hungry right now? Am I actually hungry? Like, is my stomach growling and I need food because I haven't had like a meal, like, and thinking about the last time I've had food, or am I just wanting to snack? And if I just want to snack, there's two things there. One, we need to reassess how I'm eating because I shouldn't feel snacky right now. because like based on like, meal like balancing, like this time of day, like, I don't know, like there's been times where I hadn't. And so like, I think kind of building those questions, and then I would share this with Sean. And I think this is another thing that helped me a lot is like his reaction to me talking about these things. And then him kind of like being like, yeah, and, like that yes ending, almost like improving, but like improving in like this way of like, health and stuff. Like he would just help me build this like one confidence in like my thought process, but then two like pro tips, and like, hey, think about this or try this. And honestly, it was a really powerful moment for me. We went in and did like, I was like, we should do the nutrition thing. I want to kind of start getting touched on this. And that was December was our first weigh-in. I'll call it a weigh-in or whatever. And I remember I was like, I did this back in like February. And I'd love to like, do you have that one? And he's like, yeah, if you enter your phone number or whatever. And he was able to pull up the one from February. And for me, like you want to talk about like a culmination of things, like I remember just looking at the February one and then looking at this one from December, the shape going from a C to a D or whatever, like it wasn't the I that you get in between,
Yeah.
it was like a swing. And when I think about like, I did that on my own, or not on my own. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. I did that without like actual coaching.
Mhm.
I took these like really like the seeds he planted, and some of them were like Sean just being clever and being like, I'm gonna tell him this thing, or I don't know what your intention was, but like sometimes I would ask, other times you would just kind of plant like a good seed for me. And yeah, I don't know, like I said this to my friends because my friend is trying to get into personal, like find a personal trainer, and he sent me a picture of all the trainers from the gym, and they were like these like old people and just people that didn't look like they were in shape. And I don't want to judge that, but like for me at least, I would have a hard time listening to somebody telling me to do something if they weren't practicing it themselves. And so I know when I see Sean, and it's like you can't cheat. Like there's the receipts are there. There's no hiding that. Like he knows what he's talking about. And I brought up the therapist thing because similarly, it's like, and I never thought about this with a trainer. I just never thought about this, but like physical therapy, right? Like he is like helping me get to this point because he's a professional. And like the advice I give to people whenever they ask me like about like, hey, what did you do? It's hard because like one, it's like really the first thing I would say is like it has to start from within. Like if you don't have the fire, you need to find how to start that fire. And it doesn't need to be a blaze. Like you literally just need to like and get something, like a spark. The second part to me, and I know financially this might not be for everybody, but I think you try to find a way if you really want it, because I think people make excuses a lot, and I was one of them. Like sacrifice, right? Stop spending so much money on weed if this is something important to you, if you want to get better. But you surround yourself with professionals. And you know what Sean did after I showed him that spark I made? He came up to it and blew some air into it,
Mm.
helped me add kindling to it. And he kept it stoked for me while I was trying to nurture it myself because he's a pro and he knows how to make a fire and not just make a fire, but a blaze. And like, I didn't really think about that when I started, but that was like, like that's what I get from therapy is this person who's like, hey, I heard you say this thing. I noticed this pattern. That's their job. And then they help you. Sean would see where I was weak. And like, I know I'm kind of out of time where I might dip out in a sec, but like pull-ups, I told you I was crying up on the pull-up bar. Like literally, it was like embarrassing to me. For the next like 2 months, without talking to me about his plan,
Mhm.
almost every class or every session, we would do negatives.
Mm.
He would literally just be like, hey, let's just, as during the war, like we would stretch, he'd get me on the bar, just jump up and go down really slow. And I was, again, like, I don't really question him when he asks me to do stuff because it's like, I'm giving myself to this professional. What I didn't realize what he was doing was like, he spotted this deficiency. He saw how it was affecting me. Like, it was really like rattling my confidence. And then spent like not like a day, but this like long process to get me to a place where now I'm doing pull-ups with weights between my legs. And
Mhm.
that wouldn't have happened without that sort of guidance and training. And to me, that's like the nuance of it, right? Because it's not like I said to him, I want to be doing pull-ups and I want to feel strong doing pull-ups. Like that was never a conversation we had. He saw me struggle. He saw how much it was impacting me. And dude, what's funny? I brought this up to Aaron because I didn't this is a brutal one, by the way, but we were doing the weight, like the dips, but then that one where you go down and have to just lift yourself back up. And we were doing like, I don't know if Aaron mentioned this, because when I did it with you, I had to like push off your hands. On Monday, at the end of each set of three, the fifth one I did, I would do on my own.
Mm.
And all I kept on thinking about was like, I feel like I've done this before, but like we haven't done it on the machine. And then it like popped in my head, and I was like, yo, Sean does this with me on the mat. He would hold my legs down and just do and then I thought about the pull-ups, and I was like, he's doing it again. He's doing it again. Like, and like that is why I show up the way I do. Like I see this person who cares about not just me as like a human, who cares about like my accomplishments in the gym, but he sees this full three-dimensional person, and not just some money to come into the gym, or a guy that I like part of my job, which it is part of his job, right? But like I know for me, like those 30 minutes, like he has me. Like I'm there, I'm showing up, committed, not phoning it in. And I think because of that attitude, he wants to help me. And that's advice I got a long time ago. Somebody asked me, like, would you rather help somebody that comes up to you and says, hey, I tried X, Y, and Z, I'm stuck? Or would you rather have someone that goes like, hey, someone asked me to do this thing, I don't know what to do, help me? Like, like which person would you rather help? And that's always been my attitude about being like the student side of things, is like, you can't expect somebody, I think it's very childish to assume people have enough free time in their life to just help you because you don't want to help yourself. And I mean, that's the theme of this whole conversation, right? Sean saw this version of me where it's like I was trying to help myself, but I wasn't fully there. And he still tried to meet me, but he only has so much attention he could give because he has this full group of people. But when I showed up and I was like, hey, I am trying right now, I'm giving myself to this process, I think like that's where you get like, at least I've found like a lot of success as somebody who's like gaining things from it, like as the student. And yeah, no, it means a lot. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to ramble so much. And if we have to talk more, we could do another session if you'd like, but I have to roll out in like a few.
Yeah, I
No,
think, I
great.
mean, that was beautiful. I think to add to your whole encapsulation is some of the results, because
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, my goodness, those were when I was hearing you too, like part of training your mind, but I also knew that the results had to speak for themselves as well. And like you planted like the negatives in the pull-ups and the negatives in the hamstring eccentrics, and then allowing you to do these other things. If I go to life experience first, you recently went on this
oh yeah,
hike in the Adirondacks with your friends who don't work out, and maybe like they don't eat the greatest. And again, we don't do a lot of conditioning, or we don't
yeah,
do CrossFit, but you share with me like you felt how physically fit you were, where your friends were requesting, breaks, or wanted
lots
to
of
quit the
breaks.
next day.
Yeah,
They wanted to eat fast food, and also you could allow yourself to experience some zags and still get back on track. So like all the new jungle we cleared out, you cleared out, that became so strong for you that it wasn't a door that allowed permission to just go back to old ways. I
yeah.
think that's important. I think results, you lost over 20, or I'm sorry, over 30 pounds, I think it was close to 30 pounds
And
more.
didn't lose any muscle mass during that. That was the other
Lost,
thing I was very proud of.
yeah, I lost zero muscle because you learned the importance of protein. You lost, I want to say it was like 10 to 11% body fat. So he's in the
Yeah.
teens. He's very healthy.
I was like 22 in January, and I'm like at like I chill around like 11.8 now.
And what's cool, as we began working in nutrition coaching, knowing it was a very layered arena for Peter, is giving him the grace in that, where I learned quickly where not to push and where to push,
Yeah.
where to kind of lead. And we learned that through the systems he had built through the seeds, and then having some accountability with that across the next 5 to 6 months, he was very good at maintaining his current health, his current
Yeah.
frame. And then from that, we could be real and say, well, if we want to create a change, more muscle, more weight, whatever this is, then we're going to have to add another layer of commitment to that, because right now we're comfortable with what we're doing. And like, again, that level of transparency was important for him. strength gains were substantial from, you know, there was a point, I think in the beginning, squatting around 95 pounds, 9-5
Yeah.
numbers, 95.
Double
To the
digits,
point,
baby.
to the point, when we finished at the conclusion, I knew I wanted him to end that first big gap of training before we went into the new year with some data. So he
Oh
did
yeah.
say, I think it was a 50-pound weighted pull-up. Think about the person who came in and couldn't do a pull-up to, I could do a 50-pound pull-up.
It was
He
60,
did,
by the way.
Wow.
you did a 60-pound dip.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, my bad, my
Did
bad.
a
I get those confused
60-pound
all the time.
weighted dip where
Yeah.
like, so like his upper body became extremely strong.
Wow.
He went from squatting 95 pounds to squatting 195 for 3 or 5 reps. The amount he could lift off the floor was close to 300 pounds. It was like high 200s. So again, I just share metrics from like, those weren't our intentions or our goals. We were never fixed on, we're going to do this or this is the target. It was just steady, progressive training that would shift every 4 weeks to keep it fun, keep it interesting, keep it engaging. So at the beginning, and I taught this to Peter, every new cycle, every new 4 weeks, the first week was always the most challenging because there was a reacclimation. So think about what that did for someone who struggles with change, struggles with adaptation, you know, and then nurturing that process for him. And then week 2, he'd immediately see progress, whether it was in reps or in load or in how it felt or how he moved. And then week 3, he was really shining. And then week 4, whether it was the culmination of a test or, you know, what he did, I would always share with him, hey, in week 1 or
Yeah.
week 0, you did this and you did this like this weight or these reps. And then look at you 4 weeks later, now you're doing this. And then like he would really sit in that. And some of the things were um more juicy for him. And then some were just like prideful things. And then we would start the cycle over with something different. So to the
That was a
point
confidence
where,
builder, you know, like that.
yeah.
And like, I think to what you're saying about that is like the next time we had to, because like that was a shock to me. I remember after like December, we did all these like awesome things where I felt like I accomplished all these things. And then we started like a new cycle and it was really disheartening. I remember feeling like flustered because I was like, I thought I was strong. But really what happened was like Sean was like, all right, look what we did. We're moving forward. Like, because a good trainer is not like, if I sat there and just constantly every time I went into the gym was just crushing it, like I'm not that strong, you know, like clearly like there's more to grow. So like that part I think builds the confidence. And now a few months into that of us doing these types of, you know, resetting after 4 weeks, my attitude has shifted on week 1 because week 1 used to not be fun at all. And it's still challenging, but there's a different mental energy I bring to it because I'm like, I'm going to crush this next week. And
Mhm.
like it'll be good to see what I could do just raw, like without like, you know, we haven't touched this like muscle in a sec or like we haven't really worked out this thing to then see that growth. And you know, that's hard. Sean, I know you see this probably with lots of people, but like you could see down the road because you've done this enough times. Most people they don't have that long sight. It's very short-sighted. It's like this is hard right now and this hurts. Full stop. You know, like there isn't but, you know, and I think like believing in you and trusting, putting my trust in you and not caring about the weight. The only time it's like you'll be like, oh, you did 300 pounds on the squat, like the thrust. Like that's cool. It's cool to hear that number, but like I have no context in terms of like I don't know what other people can lift. So it's like I don't know if that's good or bad. And so like it's less important to know that. I just know that I feel the same every time I go to the gym, which is like healthily challenged. And I think that that's the part that like I think accepting that and like kind of having that space for it is making it. And I want to keep on talking about this because I fucking love you guys and I love the
You got to go do it.
yeah, I know. I'm like, fuck, now I actually have to go practice what I preach. But I guess like, you know, for me, like I said this at the very beginning, I had accepted this version of myself. Where I was like, this is it. This is who I am. Which is sad. It's sad to like think about that now. Where I'm like, dude, you're like 35, you know, like you have a lot of life left. And that's a sad thing to just kind of say, like, all right, that's it. I tried, you know, I didn't even try.
Rewarding that like you caught it and like look at now, like complete 180.
And I want to honor the fact because I didn't see it as clearly as I do now. There and this is for you to go back for yourself and to continually remind, when you break the mold of a familial pattern, like you said, no one in my environment was healthy. They
Yeah,
were
they
either
still aren't. They're
skinny
all making fun of me. I'm like,
or overweight. Right. Then you have the hecklers who are going to judge. And that really is, it's not judgment on us. It's it's something coming from within them that
they're
maybe they
projecting.
wish they had more,
Yeah.
whatever, right? So your parents, your maybe your siblings, the environment around you wasn't one that promoted like, oh, go be active and healthy and in tune with like all these things that are self-betterment. And through finding, the right person, the right avenue for you, like now that's your path. And then think about, should you have kids one day or whatever your future holds, it's
Yeah.
like there's a new pathway that you broke away from that might have just promoted more, I don't know, depression, sickness, who knows, right?
Yeah.
And you broke away from that. And now this version of you, the health focused, the mentality, all of it, and where you are now, what you're capable of and where you're going, like you broke away from that. And to me, I consider that like very rare air, 1 percentile, because it's very common to be lazy, overweight,
To be
eat
the victim, you could just blame outwards. You could just make
right,
excuses,
victim, to,
right?
to eat garbage and to accept this is it. My knee hurts. I'm never gonna be able to blah 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 blah. Or I'm this and this is who I'm gonna be. And to break away from that. So like, man, whew,
The
what
other
a
thing too, like, and I really have to go, but I want to say this because like again, life stuff. Like I decided to go to school in January and I sucked at math. Like I haven't been in school in 15 years. I dropped out of high school. That's the last, like, so the last thing I really graduated. That's what I'm talking about, like resistance in terms of like giving up. Like last thing I graduated was middle school. Like to be real, I got
yeah.
my GED and then I just fucked off in college when I was in my 20s. And I decided to go back to school and take this class. And the only class I was taking was math, which is literally my worst subject. But because of the discipline I learned in the gym, and this is what I'm talking about the connection thing, where it's like it's not just about lifting weights, but like the pretty much like the 6 months leading up to school, like in the gym, was like doing math, where it's like you have to keep on repeating it. You can't just do it once and be good at it. Like there was, and I was sitting there going like, like seeing these connections and the value in that, where it's like, yeah, sure, Sean's telling me to lift this weight, and you could just view it as just that I'm picking something up and putting it down and I'm getting stronger. But it's like, I'm also learning that like it's hard. I have to repeat this task and I will get better at it if I repeat it. And like I think that is really powerful. And like I use it in my math class. I have a 97 average with 2 weeks left. And like I'm telling you right now, my nickname in high school was part-time Pete. That was like what the teachers called me. So just to give you like a perspective of like my discipline with school. And like I know that comes from hard work, like for myself, but like I didn't just like barf that into the universe. That came from really hard work with Sean and discipline and like sweating and crying through stuff, like really like just experiencing the full spectrum of things, but then seeing results. And not just seeing results, but being like, huh, I didn't realize I could do that, and like finding that belief in myself. And like, so yeah, beyond just working out, like that's what I'm saying about life crossover. Like I don't think I would have even taken this class if I hadn't been doing the gym stuff. And they have nothing to do with each other. Like literally have nothing to do with each other, but like everything. Yeah. So I just want to say that too in terms of, how successful it's been so far, like where I'm like, yeah, in the jungle, that analogy, it's like I had a new machete for this math class, to be like, okay, I have to learn how to do homework again and I have to learn how to take like prepare for a test. And like that was an overgrown jungle. And the super highway next to me, like where just the shit flows down, it's like just hang out, smoke some weed, play some video games. Like that's like what was there for me at night. Now it's like, you got homework, man. And guess what? You have the gym tomorrow morning, and like you committed to that. And like all of those things to me, yeah, I don't know. Like Sean has seen the growth and I'm proud that he recognizes it. Like it's not just this, like and like I'm proud of this. I'm so proud of my body. And I said this to Sean and Aaron, like I'm like, I could be really depressed and then I'll just like look in the mirror and be like, and that doesn't always solve the problem, but it's like you could do tough stuff. You could survive hard things. And here's like again, I have the receipts. Like there's no way to fake this. And I think that that's the thing I'm incredibly proud of. I'm going to be late to this gym now, so I'm going to work like doubly hard. So anyway, I love the two of you. It's great to chat with you. I appreciate you making the time for this. And Sydney,
Oh my
thank you.
God, thank
I'm
you. Are you
flattered and
kidding?
honored. And I'm super down if you have like if we need to talk more. Like obviously, clearly I could talk all day. I feel really strongly about this because it is something that's like changed my life, like full stop. So I'm super down to chat with it. And feel free, like I know I've talked about some personal stuff, like, you know, like I feel very comfortable sharing that. I think like to me, the local is the universal, and somebody might hear that and go like, huh, I'm also spending that much money on weed. Or, you know, I also cry a lot, you know, and like, but look at this guy. And so I think it's important to share the full, you know, because I think hiding that stuff and just being like, yeah, you just got to work hard. Like that's not helpful, you know? So, yeah, anyway, it's good to see you, Sean. I miss you so fucking much, man. I can't wait to get back in the gym with you. As always, if you need anything, I know we're kind of far. I could drop something off in a heartbeat. Like, just please let me know. Sid, hit me up if you need anything.
Thank you so
I'm
much.
I'm taking a pause on Instagram, like I said. So if you want to like reach out to me, shoot me an email, and I could give you my number too, just so you have that. But Instagram's fucking me up. Anyway, I gotta go like zip right now. Actually, I don't have Erin's number. Sean, do you have
I'll
Erin's
text her.
number?
I'll text
Can you
her. Yeah.
just let her know I'm on my way?
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, I'll see you guys. Be well.
Thank you.
Sid, I'm gonna